Hi, and welcome to the Burgess Crew Podcast. Today we welcome Karen Murphy, the Crew Counsellor, to help us dive into the topic of mental preparedness.
Yeah, our mental health is on a spectrum or a continuum, and it goes from good mental health or mental wellness to severe mental ill health. And basically the crossover point with this, what shifts us from one to another, is stress. So depending on what's going on for us in our lives and how we're dealing with that stress will determine where we are on that continuum.
As the yachting season kicks off and we head into what's often the most intense part of the year, I wanted to take a moment to pause and look ahead, not just in terms of itineraries, crew lists or provisions, but from a mental and emotional standpoint. Let's be honest, yachting can be intense. The pace, the standards, the close quarters, it's a lot even for the most seasoned crew. So today I want to explore a question that feels especially relevant right now. Can we prepare ourselves mentally for the demands ahead? And if so, what tools or habits can actually help us build the resilience we need to thrive this season? Hi Karen, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me. It's absolutely great to be part of this.
Oh, no, thank you for joining us. It's always such a treat to have somebody with so much experience and knowledge talking to us and talking to the crew about such a tricky topic, mental health.
Well, yeah, it's great that it's been spoken about because it's becoming less stigmatized in the past couple of years and becoming, more normalized to be talking about our mental health in yachting.
And it is becoming, certainly in the yachting industry, there's always been talk that it's not been talked about enough, and that the yachting industry is actually a little behind the rest of the planet when it comes to mental health and talking about mental health and the effects of mental health. But do you think yachting is catching up?
Yes, I think so. It's still its own sort of unique environment. So, any type of help has to be adapted to that, as opposed to normal structured help, which is available land-based. So everything has to be adapted to that. And people seem to be doing really well. There's so much help available now. Yeah, so it can only get better.
Which is great, isn't it? And I guess it's having help from people who understand the lifestyle of the yacht crew, which is so important, which you do have because you yourself were a crew member before. Can you give us a bit of background about yourself and your time on yachts?
Yeah, okay. So it all started off, it seems like so long ago. When I think about it now, it's a bit scary. So yeah, back in 1989, I was traveling around the world pretty much. I got a place as a trainee on the tall ships race. So at the time there was an Irish boat called the Asgard, and I was offered a place on that from London to Malmo on the tall ships race. And then got off the boat in Malmo, spent the summer backpacking around Europe. I met somebody on a train who told me about yachting, and I thought that sounds pretty good. So got off the train in Antibes, got a job shortly afterwards. This is back in the day, I think there were 2 crew agencies at the time. So you got a job by walking around, meeting people and going to Charlie's Bar, I think it was. Yeah. So I was a deck stewardess for 3 years before switching to the galley for about 20 years after that. So on both sail and motor yachts up to 90 meters. Then had a slow transition out doing temporary yacht roles, land-based chef and a house manager position. So those last few years on boats, I was always one of the oldest of the crew. And people used to come into the galley for a chat or, ask for direction in some sort of area, usually, life events, stress, relationship issues. The galley was the place to go. And then when I wanted to work on some issues in my own life, I realized that there really wasn't any support available that was informed when it came to the needs of yacht crew. So, yeah, this was a bit of an eye-opener for me at the time. And I wasn't having any luck finding a job on land that sort of ticked all the boxes. So was feeling a bit displaced, and much of my identity was around being a yachty for almost 25 years. So I knew I had to get involved in supporting crew. So basically that was my, the key to the golden handcuffs. And my purpose was, to step away and get land-based and still be able to use my time in the industry to help other people. So 8 years ago, I was accepted to do a degree in addiction studies, which included a working placement in a rehab in England. And I also worked as a private sober coach. Then I realized that focusing on substance misuse issues was a bit limiting in regards to the support that crew needed. So I did a further qualification in general counselling before setting up as the crew counsellor 6 years ago. And then for the past 3 years also, I've been one of the referral counsellors for Yacht Crew Help. And yeah, now I work with crew with the focus on everyday life issues, helping them to sort of understand themselves a bit better.
Wow. What an amazing thing to do, using your experience on yachts. And I'm guessing, and we'll talk about this in a minute, but we all have our day-to-day struggles, and you understanding what those yacht crew struggles look like and using that knowledge and experience to help other crew is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it just seemed completely logical, and there was a need for it. And the industry has been extremely good to me, and I loved my time on yachts. But I, got to my sell-by date, and I wanted to do something else. And this just, it seemed to be the most logical thing to do, and still be involved and do something sort of, I guess, to give back, to make a difference.
And what sort of crew issues do you deal with? What are the common issues that crew come to you with?
What I'm finding is, I guess, with some of the newer crew, it's everyday life issues. Some of them have just joined the boat and they're a bit lost. So loneliness, lack of freedom. There's a lot of pressure to succeed sometimes. I think especially with some of the new crew now that, their parents are pushing them quite a lot. And, there's an awful lot of pressure there for them to succeed in this, because maybe where they come from, there aren't an awful lot of options for work. So this is the way forward. So on board then there's, sometimes they don't feel like they belong. They're, generally a bit lost, a bit stuck, not feeling that they're enjoying it as much as they should be doing, and they just can't really put their finger on why. So that's what we do. We help them understand why they're feeling the way that they're feeling and what to do, how to work on that.
Yeah, that transition from shore life to working at sea. I mean, I've never worked at sea. I've been quite open about that throughout these podcasts, and I just learn about what life is like through conversations with crew and people like yourself who help those crew. That transition must be quite a shock to the system, from going from such a free, spacious space. Very eloquent, Lorena, beautifully done. To suddenly this like really confined and really restricted, and you're just with this one group of people. For a new crew member, that must be quite a tough transition.
Yeah, I mean, not always. Some people thrive. They absolutely thrive in those conditions, and others don't. And that's the reason why they come to me, basically, because the ones that don't need to understand why, so they can fit in better and they can feel like they're making the most of it. So yeah, some people do. They absolutely thrive, and it's they were made for it.
Interesting, isn't it? And I guess it's could it depend on the space that they're in at that time mentally. I've heard a lot of talk, a term, the mental health spectrum, and how our position within that spectrum changes over, due to life events, divorce, bereavement. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So yeah, our mental health is on a spectrum or a continuum, and it goes from good mental health or mental wellness to severe mental ill health. And basically the crossover point with this, what shifts us from one to another, is stress. So depending on what's going on for us in our lives and how we're dealing with that stress will determine where we are on that continuum.
Just stress?
Stress is the biggest factor. So everything that causes stress. So stress is perfectly natural and designed to keep us safe in the short term. So it gets our fight and flight response going so that we're ready to actually, respond to whatever the stressor is. So in the context of crew life, that might be experienced as, having an impossible turnaround between charters, extremely demanding charter guests or owners, confrontation or drama within the crew itself, changes in schedules, and then maybe some factors that are happening with the crew members' home life or personal life. So those all sort of determine the level of stress.
And so how is it determined? And I'm, this may be too specific a question, but as generally as you can, how do these events place you in that continuum, in that spectrum? Is it a pile up of different issues that can take you from being okay to suddenly needing to talk to somebody?
It can be. So on the wellness scale of the spectrum, you're coping with life very well, dealing with life events very well, good mood, good sense of humor, good performance at work, active, sleeping well. And then as these stressors build up, then we have reactions to that. So it's like the old sort of thing of the straw that broke the camel's back. So it builds up, and then something's got to give if that stressor hasn't been adequately dealt with. So yes, the next level of reacting would be we would get nervous and irritable, maybe very sad, trouble sleeping, headaches. We might decide to use alcohol to cope with that stress. So yeah, at that stage, then yeah, we would be thinking about, talking to somebody or getting professional help.
Okay. We're just entering the yachting season, summer season, which can often be very challenging for crew. This is where they're working at their peak. So those tools that you mentioned earlier, sleeping, establishing routines like fitness and stuff, is this how they can help build that resilience to get through the busy yachting season?
Absolutely. Resilience is key because that gives us the tools it's a preventative measure, tools and the knowledge of ourselves to tackle this beforehand. And then other solutions like, people find it helpful to write a journal like a feelings journal, so they can track their feelings. And, when they're feeling a certain way, they can then see if there's patterns developing, which will give them a very good indication of, these recurring patterns, and they can link that with their feelings and what was happening for them at the time. There's also something called the reflective cycle, which I like to give to people. So it's called the Gibbs reflective cycle. So when something happens, we can look at it and, give a description of what happened, what we were feeling at the time, and evaluate what was good about and bad about the experience. What can we make of the situation, and a conclusion, what could we have done differently? So this could be like an interaction with another crew member, which didn't go well or something. So it's a form of processing it yourself and making sense of it.
I mean, that's a recurring theme, obviously, in a lot of the conversations I've had on these podcasts. It's all about reflection, isn't it? But reflecting, but in a positive way, not in a beating yourself up and thinking, oh my God, I cannot believe I just said that. I'm an awful person. I'm, all those negative worms that you get. It's doing it in a positive way and building from it.
Yes, ruminating on problems doesn't help in the long term.
Again, one of the things that I've learned from talking to people is that importance of that community vibe on board a yacht. That you're joining a yacht and that your support group is now that yacht crew. What role does that community on board have in terms of your mental well-being?
Oh, huge, because that's our tribe, our new family. And those are the people that we will go to for help first, usually. And there's an awful lot of power in a group. So when I was training in addictions, one of the interventions we use is interpersonal group psychotherapy, because there's a power in a group of people. Even if they're, a newly formed of people who may not, like a crew, have known each other before, they may not have chosen to be together, but they are now a group. So they have it's a little microcosm. So they've got different backgrounds and experience, but they share the same common goal, which in the case of a yacht, is to maintain the boat, do charters. So group therapy works, and it's the same as a crew, because the belief is that our sense of self, our self-regard and our personality are the end result of interactions with significant others. So basically our core beliefs. And the group is this social microcosm, and the success of the group depends on its cohesiveness or bonding. So with a bonded crew sharing the same values, a crew member can feel safe opening up about how they feel. They can feel safe about being vulnerable. And sometimes that alone can just be enough to relieve stress, as sometimes it can be the first time they've actually felt seen and heard. So a group is and in this case, a crew, it's a very powerful thing. It's, you can be accepted by the group. I guess in the animal kingdom, being part of a group is survival. It means the difference between survival and not. That's a bit extreme. Sorry.
No, it's a very good point. And shoreside, we all have our groups, but we also have separate groups. We have our family group, we have our friends group, we have our work group. And you have, I have friends who I will go to with some issues, and different friends for others, but on the yacht, you are your tribe. You are, I mean, don't get me wrong, of course, that there is still connection with home, but it's not as easy as it is for me here at shoreside. So that feeling of support, going back to the mental health continuum, we will peak and trough throughout the season in times of stress and the busy periods, tiredness. So to have that tribe on board to support you, for you to go to, I mean, it's essential, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially on a boat where, you're dealing often with different time zones, and you could be in the middle of the Atlantic. Your crew will be the first people that you talk to. So a good, cohesive, bonded crew is essential. A fractured crew won't have the same effect, just like we used to do in group therapy. A fractured group doesn't work. So, and that's what we create in therapy and counseling. We create a safe space where people can come and feel safe and not be judged and be able to talk about whatever it is they feel they want to talk about.
So what can crew do to help create that safe space to talk?
Mental health training would be the most obvious, so that everybody's on the same page and they all have the same knowledge and they have the same training and they all know how important it is. And there's some excellent mental health trainers doing this now at the moment, like Seize the Mind and others, I think. I Swan do one.
Yeah.
So encouraging conversations within the crew to normalize speaking about how we feel.
And I guess just checking in with each other, just asking each other, how are you today?
Exactly, especially from heads of departments. Check in, find out how your team is doing, and be aware of subtle changes maybe in someone's mood and behaviour.
It's actually quite a powerful tool, isn't it? Just checking in, just asking somebody how they are.
Exactly. I mean, we all want to be seen and heard.
Yeah. And how about crew? I understand we've spoken before, and a lot of your time, I understand, is spent working with crew on issues that stem from life events that have happened before they joined yachts, but which were triggered once they were on board, so personal challenges that crew have faced and then joined a yacht, and that, sudden structure or conflict on board or whatever will bring about the trauma that they've suffered previously. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, well, we all have a past. Some of us had few or no negative issues, so a happy childhood. Others have had life events, that maybe we were too young to make sense of at the time. Big T traumas, little t traumas, maybe emotional neglect, bereavement, bullying. So basically our minds keep us safe. And sometimes they might do that by telling us to adapt to fit the situation at the time. So this could be by denying it happened, forgetting it, detaching, or normalizing it. So it just sort of lies dormant for a while. And then sometimes something happens that brings this to the surface. So maybe, let's say in the case of a boat, if there's some drama, lots of stress and tension, being around others maybe who have had too much to drink, this can trigger this and it comes to the surface and can cause feelings of being unsafe and being on high alert. So in the past, maybe they were able to avoid triggering situations or weren't aware of how they were feeling. And now when you're living in close quarters with somebody, it's quite difficult to avoid.
Yeah, that must be very hard for an old trauma to suddenly come to the surface in a situation where you're not with your family, your close unit at home, but actually, I mean, is it fair to say a yacht full of strangers? And suddenly, how do you deal with that? That's, I guess, when you need somebody professional to talk to.
Not always. Some of these we can deal with ourselves, through self-education, guided learning. We're lucky we live in the age now where we have so much at our fingertips that we can research things. So yeah, there's a lot we can do for ourselves before, we feel that we maybe need to talk to somebody.
So how do you know then, what is the point that crew should be looking for? When do they know that they need professional help?
I think it's usually when the constant anxiety becomes a bit intolerable and it's there all the time. So negative thoughts, our sleep is disturbed. We might find ourselves staying up, ruminating at night. Eating habits might change. We feel, well, maybe we could avoid situations. We feel like we might be avoiding something because it feels a bit safer. Feel overwhelmed, completely overwhelmed, and can't exactly put our finger why. But we just know we're not ourselves. And then maybe, sometimes using alcohol or other substances to not feel.
So for those of us who have never, for anyone listening who's never been to a counselling session, could you walk us through what typically happens during a session? What should someone expect in terms of structure, conversation? How does it work?
Okay, so most counsellors will offer a free introduction call. So, about 30 minutes, thereabouts. And during that call, they will explain how they work. what's involved, their background and qualifications, confidentiality policy, and the type of therapy they provide, because not all counsellors are the same. We all can specialize in different modalities, and some counsellors more than one. So yeah, and the first session after the intro is a chance for you and the therapist to sort of get to know each other.
And is it at that intro that you decide what kind of therapy you need?
Normally the counsellors will tell you what type of therapy they provide, because we're all trained in different things, and then explain how it works, and the client will decide if that suits them. If not, then what I will do if I have a client that says, well, that's not exactly what I want, I'll say, I can refer you. Absolutely, refer. So yeah, so you have to build up that connection. So it's called a therapeutic connection or a therapeutic alliance, because there has to be that connection in order for the therapy to work. The client has to feel safe. So if the connection isn't there, that blocks the process. So the counsellor's job is to provide a safe, non-judgmental space where the client can explore and address whatever it is on their minds, their feelings and behaviours. So it's very important there's a good fit with the counsellor.
So it could take you a while to find the right person, the right counsellor. And that's okay, isn't it? If you talk to a counsellor in that 30-minute session and you don't get that connection and you have to look for someone else, that's okay. That's there's nothing wrong with
it. And in fact, it's something the counsellor will encourage you to do. If you don't feel you can work with me, please, I can refer you, or I can tell you where you can find someone that maybe is a better fit, because that's ethical practice. And as counsellors, we follow a code of ethics, and that's part of our ethical practice.
Okay. So you have your introductory 30 minutes. You find you have a connection. What's the next step?
Well, then we schedule some sessions. The way I work is I schedule 6. In fact, they're actually not even scheduled, because I work with Yacht Crew, so I work around the Yacht Crew schedule.
Yeah.
Because Yacht Crew, as we know, find it very difficult to schedule. Yeah. So it could be evenings, weekends, doesn't have to be the same time or the same day every week. And then, we schedule some sessions, and then we move forward with whatever the client wants to bring. I work as a humanistic, person-centered counsellor, so it's client-led. So that means the client brings to me whatever it is they want to talk, and I will just help them unpick it, and we examine it together. So I don't diagnose, and I don't give advice.
So, sorry if this is a cheeky question, but what do you do then? You just listen?
I help the client to, it's talking therapy.
Yeah.
I help the client to sort of unpick what it is they're feeling by looking at the big picture and sort of unraveling it and seeing maybe what's behind their feelings and behaviors.
Yeah, you're giving them the safe space to open up, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. And usually it flows.
And are these sessions, they can be online or in person?
At the moment, in general counselling, it can be online or in person. Yeah. When I first started as the crew counsellor, I moved back to Antibes because I thought that I would have to be here for crew, and that wasn't the case, because it turned out that crew are actually more comfortable working online. And there's many reasons for this. I think everybody got more comfortable doing everything online, during COVID. And in fact, even up until that point, online counselling wasn't even sort of considered to be proper counselling. But that all changed because we didn't have a choice. So now online counselling, especially for crew, works very well because they don't have to leave the boat, which is a major factor. They don't have to take half a day off, so eat into their downtime. They can even have a session when they've got guests on board. If they can find a safe, quiet, private space to talk, we can have a session online.
We talked earlier about crew have a very, very different lifestyle, and that you have adapted to that lifestyle to make the sessions more easily accessible to them is what they need. So yeah, it's amazing. If you didn't do that, then there'd be a lot of people that probably wouldn't have the time or make the time to do it. And sometimes doing things online, like you said earlier, it might be more comfortable for people. I think you're amazing, Karen. I think brilliant, amazing work. If somebody listening wants to talk to you, wants to reach out, how can they find you?
They can find me at the moment through my LinkedIn page, The Crew Counsellor, and my Facebook page, which is The Crew Counsellor. I'm working on my website at the moment. I'm rebuilding it, so that isn't accessible right now. So The Crew Counsellor, Messenger, Facebook page, or LinkedIn. And I'm based in Antibes, so I'm on French time zone.
Fabulous. And how quickly could crew expect a response? Because I'm sure
pretty immediate. Because I work with crew, my schedule changes. So almost all of my clients are ad hoc. So if they call and say, I'm in the middle of the Atlantic, can I do a session tomorrow night or tomorrow morning or this afternoon? I will just see if I can fit them in.
Doesn't allow for much structure in your day, Karen. Wow.
I get it. Put it this way: this time of the year is a bit hectic with boats coming across. When the time zone changes, possibly every day or every 2 days.
Yeah.
We do a lot of double checking, but the general rule is we schedule on my time because I don't move.
Yeah.
They're moving, I'm staying still. And another interesting factor is that I would say half of my clients, and I do it's 50-50 male-female, I would say, which is a great thing.
Yeah.
So it means that male crew are very open to having sessions.
That is very positive. Yeah.
Yeah. So to me, that says that they're open to talking about their feelings and finding out how to be the best version of themselves and finding out more about themselves. So that isn't an issue. The issue is that they don't have the safe space somewhere else.
But at least they have you that they can come to. I mean, generally, as long as we have one safe space, one safe person to talk to, that's better than nothing, isn't it?
And of course, there's always yacht crew help, but I'm surprised at how still there are a lot of people that don't know that that's available as a resource.
Yeah. Again, a fantastic resource. Thank you so much for your time, Karen. We'll share the links to your LinkedIn page and your Facebook page on the show notes. And good luck with everything. And thanks for everything you do on behalf of all crew.
That's great. It was my pleasure. Thank you very much. And I'm just glad that it's now becoming a thing in the forefront of people's minds when they think about crew, because it's linked so much to crew retention, to everything.
Yeah.
When people feel valued and seen and heard, they stay.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.